Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold, and once more we are going to be doing a tier list where I just sort of rank all the matchups based on how close they are. And you know, I've done a bunch of these before. This is actually marking like just over 1 year since I did the first one, and there's definitely been a lot of interesting placements for some of these matchups over this past year, but we will get to that in tomorrow's video, which I do recommend that y'all stick around and check out. But for this one, just to go back over everything real quick, basically, so we have 5 categories: tilt, lean, likely, safe, and one-sided. So these basically just mean how close each of these matchups are. So the top school in all of these will be the one that is winning, just to fill y'all in. So a tilt margin will be like a 51 to 49 type thing. Like if you were to play 1,000 games, you might like the top school might win like 505 max, that sort of thing. So it's like it's the closest possible matchup that that you could have for the tilt category. For the lean category, it's a little bit more of a gap, but generally speaking, the more skilled player will win in a lean matchup. So yeah, it's close, but not as close, and I would say this is probably, like, what do I usually do? Like up to about 55 to 45 is where I put the cutoff for this. And then likely, the next one down is gonna be like about what, 10 to 30, something like that, or winning by 10 to 30. So that's like what is that, 65 to 35 tops. So you kind of get what I'm saying. Like if I say a matchup is like, I don't know, fire plus 25 or something, that basically means fire would go up here, or fire versus balance would go up here. So yeah, we'll get to that. And then safe is like anywhere from 65 to 35 all the way up until you reach the 90s range, and then one-sided is when you actually get to like the 90-10 type matchups. So this one is pretty demonic, but yeah, we're not going to see probably more than one matchup down here this time around. So with that in mind, it's already been 2.5 minutes. Let's get this show on the road. So balance versus death. Okay, this one has always been just in the safe category for the balance. This is the last tier list that I made about 5 weeks ago or so. So yeah, you know, you got balance beating death by a pretty considerable margin. Although one thing to consider is that whenever death is involved in these matchups is that I'm going to be ranking these as though poison does not exist, because it is not in the event spell elemental pack yet. So this is sort of like post-summer update, like Ares, her Fires of Mars meta, because I know that's going to be a thing. So this is just sort of the benchmark. But poison is also included in that because it is not currently accessible unless you slave away at Beast Moon for your entire life. So that's balance versus death coming up first for that. So this, I'm going to put it safe balance. Just as I have on many of these, like just balance having cards like Scarab is just ridiculous, and the fact that Death's main thing is chromatic weaknesses and how they get turned into not only universal weaknesses, which is why Scarab works so well, but they also are like diluted heavily. It's like, I think like Headless Horseman weaknesses are 35% to everybody except balance, but then for balances they're 15% universal weaknesses. That always perplexed me. I never got that, but that is one of the main factors why balance versus death is up here in the safe category. Balance versus fire is next, and on the last one I said it was lean balance, but now that the summer update is out and Raging Bull got buffed, I think that although balance definitely can win this matchup, they've really just got to be on top of their counters and all that. So I think this is going to be the first flip of the video. We're going to say lean fire, and then for balance versus death, I'd say probably balance plus 35, whereas for fire, maybe fire plus 5. Like I could see this like out of 200 games, I could see this going like 205 to 195, that sort of thing. So, or 105 to 95 rather, if we're talking about 200 games. So Yeah, fire beats balance at the moment just because like the threat of Inferno Salamander and Raging Bull is just so high, and you know, if a fire gets that off they win, but if the balance is able to keep countering, and the balance honestly can't counter forever, which does influence part of my decision and why I decided to flip this matchup around. So you know, balance definitely can still beat fire if the fire is like deck failing or not playing as well, so that's I guess the whole point of it being a lean matchup. Next on the list is balance versus ice, and on the last one I put it as safe balance, but I think I might move this one down. I think there's been a bit of reduction in this matchup. I think I might have said this was balance plus 30. I'm going to call it balance plus 20 now, so I'm going to say that's going to go into the likely category. Ice can't really leverage shields anymore, which was our main win condition before, but now I do think that, you know, things haven't really gotten that much better for ice in this matchup, but you know, you can still lean on things like Iceburn Djinn, you can still use Colossus, Wintermoon is still a thing in the game, and that is also like a very strong card that ice can really stay ahead with, that sort of deal. It's like y'all saw, like the first PvP video that I came back with back in May was an ice versus balance matchup where the balance like used 2 rebirths like without any traps on them just to heal, and I still won. So yeah, it's like that one kind of just came down to I was more skilled, and that's you do need to be severely more skilled to win a matchup if you're the bottom school in the likely category compared to lean or tilt. So yeah, it basically likely means it can still be done, but more than likely, right, not. So there's that. Balance versus life. This one, I think, has actually seen some expansion, interestingly. This one, I put it probably, like, I don't know, balance plus 40 on the last list. I'm going to say it's probably balance plus 40, 45, maybe now, because things like Rainbow Serpent are really, really good. Having things like main deck Triton is also really good, but some balances have started weaving life, which like they can get away with because Rainbow Serpent is just that guy. So we'll really just have to see. They don't fare too well against full Jades if they're weaving life compared to Storm, but you know, most lives I want to say aren't full Jading. So it's like as a balance you kind of just gotta play slow and just make sure you keep your reshuffles on hand, that sort of deal. So that's what's going on there. Balance versus myth. The last time I put this as likely myth, and I think I'm going to say the same, but further to the right in the category. I think I'm going to say this is myth plus 25, just because like reg myth does beat balance pretty substantially. It's close to safe for the myth, but ultimately like myth just has a lot of ways to beat balance if they are playing optimally, which we assume they are on all of these tier list videos. So reg myth can absolutely beat balance. It's like if a myth just keeps their braces up, that sort of thing. And yeah, it's like buff hit is kind of what it boils down to, and myth is very, very good at that, especially against balance. So yep, there's that. And then the last matchup involving balance, always good to get them out early, is the Storm matchup. And previously on the last list, I said that this was balance's best matchup, but now I think I can say it's probably life. So I'm thinking it's still probably like balance plus 35 to 40, but ultimately speaking, like balance still wins this pretty substantively. It's just Catch Owl in Shrike is still a threat, so it's kind of just on the balance to make sure that doesn't happen, and staying on top of counters, things like Scarecrow and Impair, that sort of thing. So that is important for the balance versus Storm matchup, because Storm really can catch you off guard sometimes. Next up is Myth versus Death, and this I put as one of the safest matchups in the game. I think I said it was like Myth plus 50 or something, and I maintain that position. Death, like some people have been saying like Death beats Myth, or at least brings it close, and I think the only scenario in which that could happen is if the Myth is blade stacking against a school that counters blades. I don't know why they would do this. If you are blade stacking as a myth against a death, 1 Bone Dragon is all it takes, and then your opponent has a permanent 35 buff. And I've beaten many myths by doing that, so yeah, it's like if the myth isn't stupidly blade stacking, if they're only maybe using a dual blade at most, and even then I usually like to discard mine. It's like just single blades, traps work kind of well against death, like just the single traps and all that. It's like you play this kind of like you would play against a balance, which you're already reasonably favored against. It's just death gives you so many more things to leverage. So I think I'm going to maintain my position, say this is myth plus 50. It hasn't really seen any meaningful shifts necessarily, but I do think once poison comes around and becomes more accessible, we could see some reduction, but I don't think it would get out of the safe category even then. I don't even need to really say much about this. On the last one I said it was a top 3 worst matchup in the game. Now I think it's probably top 2. Just because like we'll see what Fire v Ice looks like in a moment. But Death versus Storm, it's like every time this matchup comes up, I have to talk about this. Death has the 2nd highest damage and the 2nd highest resist, and its pierce cap is 56. Storm's resist cap is 56. So the one area where Death is lacking in terms of stats still doesn't matter. So it's like Death just stat diff Storm so hard, and then weaknesses obviously just melt Storms. And then, you know, if a Storm were to use Evil Snowman, for example, gain some tempo that way, the Death will just Pyre Dragon for 1300 damage and be fine for the most part. So yeah, this matchup, I think I said might have been like Death plus 70 or something crazy. Like it was 85 to 15 in favor of the Death. I think that's where I'm going to leave it. This is just damn near impossible for the Storm. I think the only reason it's not in the one-sided category is because like a Storm can kind of pop out and surprise you with like a Turmoil Oni play with things like Spiritual Weakness and like Queen Calypso and all that, which does threaten just a ton of damage. So it's like Storm's got the element of surprise, and it can beat the brain dead Deaths who get this Death plus 70 matchup and turn their brains off, and then like let themselves get caught off guard. But for the most part, if both schools are playing optimally, the Death will not lose. So next up is Fire versus Death. This is an interesting one. Fires before would just kind of dot spam the Death and win like that, so that was pretty cool. But now Fire's not really doing as much of that, and I think I said this might have been like Fire plus 25 last time. I think this matchup has narrowed down, but it hasn't flipped. I think we can say, I'm kind of debating, because I think if the Death plays right, they can win, but for now I'm going to call this one Fire plus 10. It's going to sort of border on lean likely territory. So yeah, it's definitely seen some reduction, and then once Poison comes out, like I don't know where it'll end up, but yeah, Fire versus Death, it's kind of like Storm if it could fight back and not just get completely rolled by things like weaknesses and all that. So it's like the stat diff is different, sort of like that. So yep. Next on the list is Fire versus Life, and on the last one, I said this was just like a Lean's Life matchup, but with how Fires have begun to arrange their deck, I think I'm going to say this one flips back. Not by much, but it is going to flip back. I think this went like I don't know, Fire plus 5 to Life plus 5, and now I'm saying it's back to Fire plus 5. Like this matchup has flipped, like, what is it, 3 times in the last 3 tier lists, something like that. So this matchup is pretty volatile, but I do think it's favorable for the Fire right now. It's just like you can't get caught with your pants down as a Fire. It's like if the Life is able to heal, then you're in trouble, because as it stands, Fire doesn't really have that many good avenues to deal damage in this matchup. Like, they can't really, they can't set up dots without getting countered and all that. They can't set up traps, obviously, without being countered. Trap counters are much more punishing. Things like Centaur, not even Rebirth, but Centaur is especially a problem, because if life gets buffs on their hits, then they can start to outtrade fires, and that is when that 4,000 health difference really kicks in, and the life can win. So that is something, but most good fires will not use a single trap and will never be off storm pips. So that's an important part here. It's like you could maybe get a surprise Inferno Salamander Raging Bull detonate play, but it's very unlikely, and the main way that fire wins these is just by hitting, heal countering, and things like the Aura War are very important in that matchup. But I think fire has the edge in that regard, and just being able to counter in the way that fire does is what keeps them afloat. And yeah, it's not a safe matchup by any means. Fire just has the tools to win. You just cannot overextend ever, and that's the main reason for that. Next up, Fire versus Myth. On the last one, I said this was likely Myth, and this one is honestly just a really weird matchup right now, because fundamentally, right, if this is Fire versus Ragmyth, then it's gonna go like here. It's like, I have put this matchup favoring the Fire in the safe category, like somewhere deep in the middle, because Myth wasn't blade stacking back then when I would make those tier lists. But now that they are, you can definitely tell that my opinion has changed. Myth, I do think, beats Fire if the Myth can get their blades up. And lately, Fire has sort of learned to play around that. I don't think it's going to be to the point where they're winning the matchup. I think it is much easier for the Myth to get their magic number 4 buffs for a Djinn to kill, or 5 buffs for a Toth to kill. I think it's much easier for the Myth to win this than the Fire, but that doesn't mean it's always going to happen. Things like deck fails can always happen. I pack a Frost Giant on my Fire specifically for this matchup, so I think I'll put this as maybe Myth plus like 8 to 10. So it'll end up in the leans category, leaning toward the Myth, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, you've got to be careful in this matchup no matter what. Like, Fire can still beat you even when you're playing like super brain dead linear. It's like a turn 2 Amut's Fury. That triple dot, it's gonna do so much if you don't have your counter ready, and especially if it's turn 2, like, you won't have a counter ready is the main deal there. So I think as long as the Myth can sort of stay on top of their buffs, their counters, that sort of thing, they should be fine. But they also, like, Frost Giant is a cheat code for Fire in this matchup, just because it's like, if the Fire can PvE them back, that's when the Myth loses. So that's my rationale there. Next up is Fire versus Storm. This one has also been exceedingly bad. I do think that a Fire has a better chance of beating a Storm than a Storm has of beating a Death. I think that these two are going to end up in the top 3 worst matchups, and we will definitely see what ends up down there. But Storm versus Fire, also probably around that plus 65 to 70 range. It's just very, very hard for a Fire to win. Just because Storm can, of course, do the fabled catch owl play, and of course just strike up if the Fire goes for a shield, that sort of deal. So Storm just kind of has all the cards in that matchup. Things like the Aura War, where like Fire thrives in other matchups, like they win the life matchup because of the Aura War. That I think genuinely is the tipping point for this matchup. But Aura War against a Storm in this matchup is just, don't do it. Do not do it if you can help it. Like, you can Furnace, but don't get too caught up in trying to negative aura them. It's mostly just keeping up with your opponent's auras. It's like taking away their buff matters more than buffing yourself. So I guess I kind of had that backwards. It's like negative aura them more than they can positive aura, and just keep taking away their buffs. That, I think, is the main path to victory if you're going to Aura War as a Fire, which I don't think you should do. If you like, you can do it to build pips to like throw amulet combos, like the trap fusion is really good, and things like fuel and all that, provided the Storm doesn't immolate, which many of them are packing that. But I do think that as a fire, you don't have many options in this matchup. It's like you can set up Aquila Storm, but they will most likely kill you first, and that's sort of the main deal with this matchup and why it's not close at all. So there is that. Next up is Ice versus Death, and again, taking this into like Poison is not a thing yet, just sort of not acknowledging it. On the last list, I said this was like a lean Ice matchup. I think that's where it's gonna stay. I think we're gonna go with like Ice plus 2 to 3, so it like barely gets out of the tilt range. But I think I gave it a similar characterization on the last list. So not a lot of movement, but I do think once Poison comes out, we might see this, or when it becomes more accessible, just because it's like Ice needs buffs to hit effectively, especially against Death, and right now it's like negative auras are a good way for Ice to get that, but once Poison is out and more accessible, it will not be that easy. So Ice still performs well against weaknesses as they are designed to, but like Death can still get the better of you from time to time. It's definitely not a set in stone matchup. Deck fails matter a lot here. Just like cycling and all that matters a lot. You can't really shield as an Ice in this matchup, which is a little tragic, but you know, Pyre Dragon is just that guy. Although of course you could try shield, bait a Pyre Dragon, send a Wyvern for I guess somewhat comparable damage, and then threaten a bigger hit out of it. But I don't know, there's like mind games involved. I've seen Death's Twaret Fire Elves, so it's like, you know, can't really do much as an Ice there. But yeah, that it's a very close matchup, one of the closest, if not the closest. I don't know if we'll see any tilt matchups this time around. There have been lists where I haven't, but I don't know. We'll find out. Maybe there will be one later. Next up is Fire versus Ice, and this one has had a really rough history, but I think that now that Twaret is 6 pips, and like obviously still like Life King art will work, it's just having better access to dot counters and then dots not being as insane as they were is going to significantly reduce this matchup, or at least the gap in this matchup. It is still borderline impossible, or not really borderline impossible, but it's very hard for the Ice to win this. It's just now it's Ice plus, or not Ice, but Fire plus 40 instead of Fire plus 90. So that's where we're at. I think that 70 to 30 favorability for Fire is probably a good place to put it on this list. It's just sort of like the Ice can win if they play well, but even when the Ice plays better, in a lot of cases the Fire can still win. That's how most of these safe matchups go. So it's like just the matchup lean alone can carry most of the schools on the top here. That's kind of the big thing. Except Storm. Like, yeah, you do have to kind of be on your guard as a Storm because you're so fragile, even in a matchup like this. But you got the idea. But yeah, Fire versus Ice, not nearly as bad as it once was, but still pretty bad. Like, you definitely don't want to get a Fire as an Ice. Speaking of schools you don't want to get as an Ice, I hereby present to you the one entry into the one-sided tier. This matchup has forever been a thorn in the side of every Ice. The only time this is ever reduced is when Ices were taking like Storm Dual School last summer, something like that, and things like Triton were very helpful for the Ice. It's like Ice had a pretty good chance against Life back then, but there were more fires in queue, and they started spamming things like Glacial Shield, Glacial Golem, which thankfully got banned earlier this year. But it's like things like Glacial Shield still exist. Fire still use that occasionally, and you don't want to run into it is the main point that I'm getting at. So things like most Ices are weaving either Fire or Life these days, and if they're weaving Life, then you know they're good at countering dots, but not good at countering heals. And it's the same with things like Fire Weave, that sort of thing. So yeah, Ice innately does not have many good heal counters. I pack a few Dr. Vons on my Ice in side deck just because I had the room there, and it's like, I haven't actually gotten this matchup yet, but I mean, I know. Like, the main thing is Threefold Fever and cards like Dr. Von's Monster are enough to have an ice win this matchup. The problem is Purge exists, and especially main deck Purge, which basically it's like if an ice can only carry 4 threefolds, a life is most likely going to carry 4 purges in main, if not more inside and / or evil snowmen, just to complement that. So it's like life understands that infections are very effective if their opponent can keep them. So the life's main goal, especially in the ice matchup, is to make sure that the ice cannot keep infections on the life. And it's like that means you can't really whoa, voice crack. I am apparently still 12, and despite the fact I'm 22. Anyway, but yeah, ice can't Jin in this matchup because it gambits infections, and you just don't want to do that generally. You could go for shields, but lives do pack things like Fire Elves, so it's like, it's a little hard to set up a shield gambit as an ice in this matchup, but it is doable. It's just, you can't really burst them down. And you shouldn't be hitting a life as an ice if you don't have a threefold up, and it's like I said, it just goes back to having that threefold up. That matters just so much, and a lot of the time you are not going to have it. So just kind of sad reacts there, but is what it is. This matchup, I don't know if it can ever be fixed, because these two schools are neutral on the Rochambeau wheel, so I think just from a fundamental standpoint, this matchup is not going to see the needle move unless Ice can start weaving a school with better heal counters like Storm again, but, you know, Glacial Shield, so probably a no-go. And then Death would be a good solution to it, but then you can't counter dots, you can't counter shields, and those matter a lot as well. So yep, I think this is going to stay here for quite some time. Next up is Ice versus Myth. And okay, last time I put this as Tilt Myth, because genuinely Myth, like, it had the slightest of advantages because Myth could pivot whenever they wanted to. Now though, Myths, it all depends on if the Myth is running Raging Bull. I think that if the Myth is to send like a Toth into a Raging Bull, that sort of thing, then it can kind of still, like, it can at least still have the edge in this matchup. But I think that edge has kind of evaporated. I think I am going to tilt this back in favor of the Ice School, making it the second, third anti-counter matchup, like the reverse counters. Fortunately, there's nothing, you know, past the lean category here, but, I mean, yeah. Like, I think just because Ice wins the Aura War, wins, like, things like Bubble, and Ice... The main thing from me is that Ice can sort of outlast the Myth at this point. Myth used to have just the slightest of edges, but I think that's gone now. And I think Ice wins, just because it's like if an Ice can keep a brace up at all times, and a lot of Ices are running 10 braces, which is just immense. Like, it's kind of crazy, but a Myth does not want to hit into that brace, and Shu is still a card that works against Myth. Like, a Myth can still immolate, but then what? You know, it's like Ifrit isn't going to give them some magical win there. They could Oni out of an immolate, I guess, but, you know, like, an Ice can still defend themselves against it, and of course, like, immolate does use up your own buffs, like your blades, that sort of deal, so it's not as strong. So, yeah. The only thing keeping this from being further into Ice's column is just the fact that Ice is still Ice. I mean, let's be real. Ice can outlast a Myth, but in a matchup where you need more than half of your braces, or at least close to all of your braces, like you will in this matchup, pulling them at the right times is going to be very important, and you know, pulling your thievings is also going to be important. Just overall, the Aura War takes the foreground in this matchup, and Ice has the distinct advantage there, but it does all come down to deck RNG, and that matters a lot. So deck RNG does screw Ice in this matchup a lot, but I do think that just fundamentally Ice has moved the needle just enough to flip this matchup in its favor. So always love to see that. We love to see Ice winning, so there you go. Speaking of seeing Ice winning, next on the list is Ice versus Storm. I think last time I put this at maybe Ice plus, I don't know, 15 to 20-ish. I think that is going to be where it stays. I think that using things like Threefold Fever is helpful. It's just, Shrike is still a problem for the Ice School. Storm has, fortunately for the Ice, of course, I didn't want to say Storm has fortunately lost something, but fortunately for the Ice, Storm has lost the ability to infinitely chain Berry Surprise into Path B Storm Owl, and that was a big win condition for the Storm in this matchup beforehand, like before the patch and all that, because you could do it through a Threefold Fever, and you wouldn't heal for much, but you'd have the heals to leverage, and that is what ultimately mattered the most. So now you can't really do that anymore, since it will gambit the heals, which means Threefold Fever is good enough to stop a Storm from healing. It's just not going to get into the safe category. It is definitely not a safe matchup, because Ice cannot kill Storm very quickly. Things like Winter Moon are helpful, but there's a lot of storms that are, I'm not even going to say a lot of storms, there's one specific storm that complains a lot about Winter Moon, and forgets that tower shields exist and work against the Ice School. It's like Storm does not have very much resist at all. Typically they're running like, I don't know, 47, 49, depending on the amulet, I guess. But that is enough to where a tower shield can work, because Ice's Pierce cap is 47. And so what that means is a tower shield as a Storm will stop a Winter Moon. I don't know what it's going to take to get through to my buddy Liam on that one, but yeah, that's where we are. It's like tower shields work against Winter Moon. It's just Ice can't kill Storm as quickly as Storm can kill Ice. It's a lot of like deck fail type stuff, and things like Brace is going to matter a lot. Shields to a degree can help. Maybe if you were to like use a Tri-Shield, maybe they break the Storm Shield, and then you Lord of Winter into a Winter Moon. That's like a good source of damage there. It's just, this matchup is a little finicky, and of course, if you don't have a threefold on, after you hit, it's the exact same thing as the life matchup, where they will heal, the Storm will heal with a Berry Surprise, probably break a shield in the process, and that's a lot more damage that you have to do, because Ice does not carry any like cheap heal counters. So yeah, Berry is a real big problem for Ice. So yeah, I mean, if the Ice can't keep a threefold up. So a lot of moving parts to this matchup, but it is definitely not as safe as some people make it out to be. Next on the list is Life versus Death, and on this one, I did say that this was safe for the death last time. I do think I'm going to maintain my position on that. I don't think it has seen any reduction. I think I put this as probably death plus 30, so right on the edge. But ultimately, Death's heal counters are enough to stop a Life Wizard from healing, and that matters a lot to me. And yeah, I mean, Life does definitely have some new tools, but I don't think it's enough to really move the needle down into the likely category. So, no change in the Death versus Life matchup from last time. Next on the list is Life versus Myth, and this is an interesting one. Where did I put this one again? Okay, Lean Life is where I put it last time. I think there's been some expansion on that front. I think we're going to see this going to likely life over the myth. I think we're going to see this at maybe life plus 25. So, I mean, you know how it goes. Life versus myth. If the life is on top of their blade counters, that matters a lot. Yeah, it's just don't let the myth get the Djinn off. That's the big thing. And you should be fine from there. But if the myth can get the Djinn, typically coupled with a Shrike, then it's a problem. But life's massive health pool and the ability to just permanently sit on brace helps them a ton in this matchup. So life beats myth by about 25, just a little, like around the same as what myth is being balanced by. I'm going to say ice also beats storm by about, I don't know, 20-ish, something like that. So honestly, all of these are close, close in range. But yeah, ultimately, myth loses this matchup by more than it used to, but it's not completely unsalvageable. So that's my take on that. I got 2 matchups left, 35 and a half minutes in. Awesome. So storm versus life is the next one up. And I think that this one, it is very hard for the life to beat a storm, just because storm's heal counters are very good. Although, given Seraph's existence, Goat Monk into Seraph, if the storm doesn't have a Triton up, can be very strong. I think that's going to be enough to move the needle down from Storm plus, I don't know, 60 or wherever I was putting it before, down to maybe Storm plus 40-ish. I think that's where I'll leave it. So, Life has gained some tools in this most recent update, but it hasn't moved the needle enough to where they can sort of have a consistent winning strat in this match. So, Storm versus Life. It's still a very uphill climb, but in my honest opinion, not as much as it once was. Next on the list, last on the list as a matter of fact, is Storm versus Myth, and this one I had it tilt Storm in the last list just because it's like, the way that Storm plays, you're gonna most likely want a Shrike if you're the Myth. Because, you know, like, you gotta spam shields, try not to get elephanted, that sort of thing, and get your buffs up, and eventually send a Djinn. But I have noticed some storms carrying Death Myth set shields, which is a good idea given how badly the Death matchup goes for Storm. But I do think we're going to see this expand quite a bit. It's all dependent on if the Myth can pull their Shrike. And more often than not, the Myth is not pulling Shrike too often. So I'm going to put it back in the safe category for the Storm. I think if the Storm is playing optimally, then the Storm will win this matchup. Because the Storm can kill the Myth very quickly. And the Myth, while it can kill the Storm just as quickly, it is ironically not as good against shields, and it's also not using shields nearly as much. So this comes down to, does the Myth pull the Shrike? Does the Myth keep the Gambit is also important, but does the Myth keep the Shrike? Or does he pull the Shrike? And more often than not, the Myth does not. And that, it's like extra turns in general, if you're a more fragile school against a Storm, is really detrimental, and that's why Storm beats Fire by as much as it does. So, yeah, I mean, I do think Storm has the edge on Myth, just because, you know, you can catch Owl, and then, like, Storms typically pack more Shrikes than Myths, so just sort of having that as well, I do think that Storm beats Myth by a pretty substantive margin, just because Storm's offensive tools are better than Myth's. So that's where we're gonna end that. So with that in mind, about 39 minutes in, let's start talking about what exactly is the best school in PvP right now based on this list. And yeah, how I've done it in the past is basically just based on who's winning the most and like by how much. And right now we can definitely see that Balance has 3 matchups in the safe category, and it wins pretty comfortably against Ice. It does lose to Fire, but not by much, and Balance definitely still has a good win condition in this matchup, being, you know, not letting themselves get salamandered into the bowl, and also just forcing the Fire to keep their pips low, that sort of thing. So Balance can beat Fire. That's why it's in the lean category. It's only like Fire +5, so it's very close, very swingy. But yeah, its only real issue is Myth, and Reg Myth at that. If the Myth is not playing optimally, and I've noticed a lot of Myths don't, it's like then, you know, then the Balance can win this one as well. Balance, I think, can win all of these matchups. It's just sometimes it's harder, and in the case of Myth, it absolutely is. So Balance has 4 pretty substantive winning matchups, and both of its losses aren't by that much, and they still have a chance. So I think, yeah, I think that's kind of the only case in which Balance does not have like a safe loss matchup, if I'm looking at all this correctly, because Fire has one, Ice has one, Storm has a few, Myth has this one, Life multiple times, Death does, but yeah, Balance does not have any safe losses, pretty much. But then we have to think about what comes in second, and Death wins this one, it beats Life, it beats Storm, it loses these 2, but not by much. I'm hesitant to say Death is second. I don't know what I'm going to put at second. I really do not. Because, alright, Death has these 2 wins, but it's got an equal amount of losses by similar margins. Like, the Death Life matchup is offset by Balance Death. The Death Storm matchup is offset by Myth Death. I don't know, because it's only got like these 2 winning matchups. Fire, on the other hand, has 4, but 3 of those 4 are a little shaky. It's like, who's got the safer win? I guess Storm has 3 safe wins, but I don't think I would say Storm's at second. I think Balance being a definitive first place is like a foregone conclusion, but it's just, I don't know what's second. If we're going by matchups, it would be Storm, but Storm also loses pretty badly to Balance and Death, and then Ice also wins. So it's like, I don't know, Storm is super volatile, because it's like, when it wins big, but then it also, like, when it loses big. Storm is probably the most matchup reliant one out of all of these. I don't know. Because once Poison is in, so, like, these 2 matchups where Death isn't favored in the lean category are probably going to flip. So I think going forward, I want to say Death is number 2. It's got the stats, but yeah, it's just sometimes, like against Ice, against Fire, it's not great, but I do think that it's got a shot in a lot of these. So I think we'll go with Death at number 2, and Fire's an interesting one because it's got, like I said, 3 shakier winning matchups. It's got this very safe one, and it's got this also very safe loss. But this loss is like you don't always lose this one as the fire. I don't know. I think I'm going to say fire's third. And what else is there? Because life's a real contender. I'm going to say that right now. Life is a very real contender. But in terms of the matchups, it's losing a lot of matchups. But I do think... I don't know. I think I'm going to say Storm is fourth. I think we're going to go Balance, Death, Fire, Storm. And then Myth, Life, and Ice are what's left. Life obviously has this win and then this win. Myth beats Fire in Balance and Death. I think Myth might be our 5th place. Yeah. And then I think... because Ice does not have a safe win. Let's remember that. So I think just based on that, Ice has these 2 flimsy wins. This one is a little safer. But then, yeah, Life has this win, this win. I feel like Ice is a higher skill ceiling. But Life has, I guess, a higher floor. It's... Life's ability to heal. This tier list is real tough, man. I don't... This one is real hard. It's kind of hard to determine where each school is. I think we're going to say... We're going to give number 6 to Life. And number 7 to Ice. But it is not going to be the same as what it was last time, where Ice was like a definitive number 7. I think truly that Ice is much better now than it was before, but that doesn't mean it's risen. And it kind of pains me to see Ice climb in the meta and not be as bad, but still be at the bottom. So it's like, I mean, that's kind of just the life of an Ice Wizard, I guess. But ultimately, I think this is where we're going to end it. Balance is first, then Death, then Fire. Of course, there being a huge gap between Balance and Death. But Balance, then Death, then Fire, then Storm, then Myth, then Life, then Ice. But every school is competent at max. That's how I feel about it. So that was a long one. I think now is a good time to wrap up. Definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This this next tier list, that whenever I do that, it might be July, it might be early August, depending on when the Aquila update drops, and I just sort of have to let the meta settle for a little bit. But the next tier list with the whole Fires of Mars spell is going to be an interesting one, I feel like. So, I don't know. We'll see how that looks. But for now, thank you all for watching. I've been Ice Gold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. My Discord is down in the description if you want to chat with me some more. And I will see y'all later.